Hi, I'm Dr. Ruth Anderson with Enlightened World Network. This is an episode of Enlightened Women. Just grab a cup of coffee, whatever you'd like to drink, make yourself comfortable and join us. Enlightened Women is a show about women who are living lives, walking in alignment with their soul's calling. In these episodes, we not only talk about what these enlightened women are up to, but what are their latest learnings as a spiritual being having a physical experience. Today, I am delighted to bring you Deb Goldberg. She's a spiritual teacher, an author, and a podcast host with Angel Heart Radio. So Deb, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here, Ruth.
Thank you, Deb. So let me share with folks how we ever became acquainted, because I think this happens frequently. I have been working with Sherry Myers, and Sherry Myers has a podcast called How to Connect with Angels. And I have been listening to all of those and posting them on Enlightened World Network. When I listened to the podcast by Deb Goldberg, I thought, I have got to look her up, because Deb and I have similar paths as far as direct communication and conversation with the spiritual divinity. And it just stood out to me so strongly that Deb was somebody I could connect with who could really understand this crazy life of walking with spirit that I've led. And so I reached out to Deb, and she was so gracious and reached immediately back out. And since then, she's really become somebody I can trust and someone I can ask questions of. So Deb, you've just been an absolute delight for me to find. Do you mind taking a minute and sharing with folks the big aha that led to your awakening?
It was about 4.5 years ago. I was having some family issues with my son and his wife. And I thought to myself, for the first time, what am I doing that is creating my pain? It completely opened up a door in a way that I never opened before, because it's so easy to just blame other people for whatever's going on in our lives, or that they've created pain for us. And so I started really looking at myself and saying, what am I doing that's creating these problems? Because I don't want to have problems with my family. I love them. And that led me to Margaret Paul, Dr. Margaret Paul. And she's awesome. She has a website called Inner Bonding. And I started to read an article that she wrote. And I said, I'm going to go to one of her workshops. And I went to the workshop. She read a meditation. Now, I've been a counselor for 18 years by then. And I never really did meditation before. I did deep breathing and relaxation, but not meditation. So this was the first time I meditated. And the meditation was to bring in your spiritual guide. During this meditation, in comes Jesus. I didn't know it was Jesus. He was not dressed as we've known Jesus to be dressed from pictures. And I'm Jewish. So the whole thing was just very different for me. I've never experienced anything like this. It was almost like a movie started playing in my head, just opening up to consciousness and visualizing Jesus and myself sitting at a pool, because that was my happy place. We weren't speaking. We were just sitting together. And I said, well, I don't know who this is, but it feels really, really good to sit with him. I knew it was something spiritual going on, but aside from that, I had no idea. Eventually, the whole vision changed, and I was laying in a raft in the pool, and Jesus got into the water, and all of a sudden, my arms just filled up in this raft with all different aged me's that were wounded me's. He took my arms and put them around all of these, these younger parts of me. And I understood that I needed a lot of healing. I had a lot of abuse in my background. It was just so overwhelming. I felt completely blessed. I didn't know what what was happening, but I know it felt good, and I felt love like I had never ever felt before. I went home and kept practicing this meditation, and I was wondering, why don't we ever speak? Like, we just sit here with each other and it just feels good. And I heard, just say hello. And I said, okay. I said, hi. And he said, hi. And the conversations began.
So you hear and see
Mm-hmm.
Christ.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for your Jewish family members, that all of a sudden you are having conversations
Mm-hmm.
with Christ?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, it took me a long time just to even acknowledge it was Jesus, because I had no reference of this other than understanding from Christianity who Jesus is. My inner child kept telling me, it's Jesus. It is Jesus. And I was like, okay, okay. And I started, to just take that in. I talked to my family about it, and they think I went off the deep end. They didn't understand how I could hear or see. And, I also see and talk to God and angels, and maybe I became a joke in a little way of like, that's all just crazy Aunt Deb, or they just didn't understand. They haven't been awakened yet. And it was interesting. It didn't feel good because, when you are awakened, you want to share. You want to tell people. It's so exciting. It's so overwhelming. It's so loving. And you want everybody to know that that's what's inside of them. But it was not a good response. I've, brought my books to my mom, and, I'll talk to her about my experience. And, she says things like, well, all that matters is that you're happy. And if you're happy, that's all that matters.
Sort of discounting.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
So when I first shared my first book with my father, I really hadn't shared much with him. So you were really very brave for bringing your family into your circle, because I was really hesitant to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But my father was dying of mesothelioma, and I knew before he died, I needed to share this side of me. Otherwise, I knew I would have great regrets. And I told him, and I showed him my book, and his main issue was, I hope you'll be safe. Because he knows of other people who have been traumatized, bullied, for sharing, being able to hear and see spirit. So that was his main concern. And then the next thing he did was tell me the times that he has experienced spirit, how spirit really led him in his career path over the last 30 years, and how he would go to sleep at night thinking of a problem and wake up with the answer. And he knew it was divinely guided. So I had waited all of those adult years to share with him. And he never would have told me had I not taken the risk.
Mm-hmm.
So thank goodness I took the risk, because on his deathbed, it was the most beautiful conversation we could have had that never would have happened had I not shared my ability to be intuitive with him.
Mm-hmm. That is a beautiful, beautiful story. How nice to get validation and recognition, and that is something that the two of you could have shared before he left. That I'm so glad you said something.
So, but I'm still hesitant to tell some of the people that are closest to me. Mm-hmm. I've written 3 books now. My husband's only read the first one.
Uh-huh.
And I'm okay with that. And apparently he is too. He's just not ready to go there, and I respect that.
Right. And this conversation in itself is so awesome for women that are walking through their spiritual journey, because we do deal with this with our friends and our family members. this is part of the journey, is people not always embracing what you're telling them. They don't understand. I know, actually, I just met with one of my girlfriends, and she was telling me when I first woke up 4.5 years ago that I was having such trouble explaining to her what was happening to me, that she couldn't understand me either, because I was so confused. I always prayed to God. I always believed in God, but I believed in God in a different way than I do now. I had not been in this spiritual world before. So it was like, bam, it was like lightning, just a jolt that woke me up and said, hey, this is the way it is. Part of my problem was I didn't even know how to talk about. I didn't know how to have the talk, what was happening within me. And I didn't share with my mom and the rest of the family until my books came out and they were published, because I figured, well, if they read this, I want to tell them about it before they just read it, if they even should read it, right? Because none of them, I think, have read it, but I felt, well, it's time for me to come clean, to come out of the spiritual closet.
I had one family member that couldn't handle it, and I knew she would not be able to handle it. So I was not going to give her my book. But somehow one of my family members gave her the book. And it was really unfortunate, because I knew she couldn't do it and I was right. And when I saw her next, she came up to me. She took both of my hands in her hands and she said, I received your book. And she said, I just couldn't. I just couldn't. And I said, I know that this is not in alignment with your beliefs. And I wasn't going to share it with you. And it took a year for her to be able to embrace me again. And what's so interesting to me, Debbie, is that she and I worship the same God. It's just so weird to me that she would get caught up in dogma enough to distance herself from me, when really we're worshiping the same God. But that was really the only fallout that I've had from coming out of the closet, as you say.
Yeah. I know that some people I just won't talk to them for the same reason that you had. So that was lucky that it was only one. And that, we do have intuition. We know who's gonna maybe receive it. But I'll tell you what, I have opened up to other people not really knowing, and it really opened up dialogue for us to have a conversation. And then I realized that their thinking isn't that far off from mine. So sometimes I get really surprised. And what was interesting, what you're just saying about this one relative, is that my mom will tell me that she still talks to her parents who have passed on, and that a child that she lost after birth. And I'm like, well, if you are doing that, it's not that far from what I'm explaining to you that you can do. And my sister as well. My sister feels things at times, but not crossing over in the sense of saying, well, there is direct communication with the divine.
They are okay having communication with somebody who's passed, but when it comes to, oh, you think you're talking to God, is that like the divider for what's acceptable and what's not?
I think so with a lot of people. I once, when I was counseling people, when I was doing therapy work, I had said to somebody that I talked to God, because I started bringing spiritual work into my counseling. And this man said, well, who the hell do you think you are? I'm no different than you, I told him. everybody can do this. When you say that you talk to God or Jesus or angels, it like puts you in a whole nother level. And people don't know how to relate to that.
I think it's not the fact that you talk to them. I think it's the fact that you can hear them in turn. I think a lot of people will talk to, but don't stop to listen.
I totally agree. People don't realize that they're being spoken to all the time, that they are not walking by themselves by any means, and that there's constant flow of conversation if you allow it. But people get scared. Because when I started thinking about what was going on in me, I'm like, what? You know, like I'm a counselor. Most people would say I'm psychotic if I'm talking into the spirit world. But I knew darn well what I was seeing and what I was hearing and what I was feeling. The feeling. You cannot feel anything like that in this earthly world. And you know when you're hearing God's voice. You just know it.
Right. I completely agree with what you're saying. One of the fascinating stories to me is you ended up with your home situation living by yourself for a few weeks. And during those couple of weeks, you received a major download of information. And tell our listeners what you did with that information and how you received it.
We had moved to Florida, January 2016. So this was maybe a year and a half at the most after I had woken up. And right before I left Pennsylvania, I kept thinking, I feel like I'm going to write books, but I didn't know where it was coming from. And I had to be by myself for 6 weeks in Florida. And my husband was finishing up selling our home in Pennsylvania. And Jesus just said to me, go get your journal. We're going to write. And I said, write what? I don't know how to write. I've never written a book before. I've never been good at English. My grammar is awful. And he said, don't worry, I'm just going to talk and you're going to write down what I say. Over a 6-week period, it was 2 weeks per book. He gave me 3 books. I'll tell you what, I would fall asleep over and over again while he was dictating to me because I felt like so much knowledge was coming through, stuff I didn't understand, and it was like so much light coming in. I was exhausted, but I did what he asked me to. I wrote everything down. I got 3 books. He said they were supposed to be a series. He was very specific. He told me when he wanted them published, the dates of when they had to be published. And I, of course, needed to do editing because when I hear, it's not coming out edited. It has to be edited because it's almost like a flow of consciousness. I asked Jesus, what should I do? And he said, well, Brian's going to edit for you. And I said, well, I don't think he's going to like that. In fact, he wanted him to type the books from my journal into Word. And I said, you know, I'm a much faster typer. He said, no, I want Brian to do it. And I really think that was Jesus's way of getting Brian to hear all the knowledge that I had been given. Once Brian came back after the 6 weeks, Archangel Gabriel gave me a 4th book, which I haven't put out yet. It's about intuition. And then 2 other books came about, one a duality and another book which is going to be called The Gospel of Jesus, where he's just talking about his life and what's going on here with all of us.
So I similarly, I've learned so much through meditation as well. That's when Archangel Michael or Archangel Gabriel would show up and literally like fly me off places and teach me things. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was told the first time, write all of this down. And so I started journaling, and then I heard, so write an article. I thought, okay. So I wrote an article, and then I heard, so now create a book. I said, I don't mind writing it. I said, but I don't know how to publish it. I don't know anything about that. So if you want me to publish something, you need to drop the people in my lap to do that, which of course they did. And then a year or so later, I heard, write another book. Well, of course, I'd been keeping daily notes from meditation. So I started pulling it all together to write a second book. And I heard, you're not writing one book, you're writing two, and think of it as twins. I said, but one needs to be written first. And they said, no, think of it as twins, that you're incubating both of them at the same time. And I was given a publish date, and they sort of came together into the world at the same time. And I was given the symbol, the yin yang symbol, where they both could stand by themselves, but there's such fluidity between the two. So that's what I did. So I understand exactly what you're talking about in this. And it's just so fun for me to speak to somebody else who has lived through that same kind of downpour of information, and then what to do with it and when to do it by. So
Yeah.
Great fun.
It is great fun. And I'm just so excited just listening to you, because it's like you're speaking my story too. It is not much different. And it is exciting to find other people that have had a similar journey in their awakening and the messages that they're receiving. And I think our calling, our purpose is very, very similar. Is about waking people up and giving them a divine experience by leading them, to their divinity. It's awesome, because when you first wake up, a lot of times you feel by yourself, you're alone, and because your friends or family don't understand what you're going through, because you don't understand what you're going through, and so you feel very isolated. And it's important to reach out and know that there's so many people across the whole world who have awoken and that have experienced many of the same things or different, but they're awake and they can talk with you, and then start developing a community to help.
Right. For me, it was really interesting, Deb, because I was kept isolated for about 3 years. Now, of course, I still had friends and I still had family, but really there was nobody that I could really talk to. And I wanted a mentor so bad. And I just kept being reminded that nobody here has experienced exactly what I've experienced. So really the only mentor for me was Archangel Michael, or a Divine Mother, or Archangel Raphael, or a Gabrielle. They were my mentors. And I understand now why that was the case, but boy, were there some lonely times.
Oh yeah. And it's really something to work through, because we can look at it and saying, is that you're awake, that you're not alone spiritually, that you can't be alone, there's just no such thing. But in this experience of humanity, we do feel lonely. We do want to talk to people about what's going on with us, and we want to share things and have relationships where we can talk about all of this awesome stuff that's happening. So I totally agree. I probably couldn't talk to anyone for about a year. And what happened to me is I used to love watching Barbara DeAngelis in the 90s. Like, I used to see her on TV, and I would think, I want to be just like her. She was a psychologist. And I guess I didn't know what happened to her. I lost track of her. And then all of a sudden she comes across my computer like a year after I had woken up, and I see she's a spiritual guru. And like, she completely transformed from the 90s into, she calls herself a mystic. And she works with people and helping them wake up and what the process is about. And And so when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go to her workshop. And I did. And I signed on to work with her for 16 months. And so I got a whole community of other people that were being nudged to awaken. Everybody was in a different place. Not everybody was connected spiritually in the way that I was, but that's where they were headed. And so it gave me a forum to actually connect with people that were on the path of awakening. And that really, really helped me, because I thought, oh gosh, there's a lot of people out there from all over the world that I wouldn't even know existed. But it is really lonely at first, and it is kind of just so odd to even think about that when you're just filled with so much love and you're filled with all of this help, support inside of you. You're still longing for support outside of you.
I wanted somebody so badly to be able to say, this is where you've been and this is where you're going. Nobody can tell me where I'm going.
Right? Yeah. Nobody can tell us where we're going. I've learned that, because I think when I woke up, I started becoming like a junkie on the computer, trying to understand what was happening within me and, what this experience is about. And, and then there's people that do all kinds of stuff like readings and mediums and whatever. And I started to realize that when I engaged those people, because I wanted to know, they can't tell me my life path. They can tell me a snippet of something, but they cannot tell me anything else. And that typically what they told me, I really kind of knew intuitively, but I was not listening to myself.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the most fun things for me about this journey, and it really is fun for me, is sometimes I will get just like an option, like go to this workshop email or something, and I will always say, Archangel Michael, are you here? And when I get the yes, then I say, should I go do this thing? Mm-hmm. And occasionally it's like, yes. And it's like, really? I should do this? Yes. It's like, okay, fine. So every time that has happened and I have said, okay, fine, whatever, there's a reason you're telling me this, I have been able to go and understand why I'm supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. And some of the people that I have connected with the most, that truly feel like a soul sister on a similar life path, have been from these situations where Archangel Michael said, you really need to go to that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I just blindly say, okay, I'm packing my bag or I'm making that reservation and I'm just going to go do it.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. It's such an important point too, is to listen to what you're being told and guided to do. Because that's part of the battle of ego getting in the way, fear getting in the way, or saying, like, I don't have the money to do this, or why do I really need to go? I know there's a part of me that's very resistant and gets into kind of battles spiritually. I know better, and I know that's ego. And some of the things that you're asked to do just don't make any sense at all. But there's a reason why we're being asked to do these things. So it's awesome that you listen and you follow through, and then you get the benefit of something.
Right. And I really do believe that next steps may not have happened had I not done that particular thing. Had I not listened and said, you got it, I'm going. Mm-hmm. I think the more we listen and the more we follow the guidance that we're given, the more guidance they actually give us.
Yes. There's, I think, a building of trust within you, within each of us, that if we keep following through, even though it makes no sense, you are right that more guidance, then you can get bigger stuff. You could get more guidance. You could get, I don't know if you would call it bigger stuff, but you get much more responsibility, if that makes sense. You get more responsibility, whether that's information or whatever it might be. And it is a real journey of trust. This whole thing is having faith and believing what you're told. And even if you're second guessing it, to do it anyway.
I love that you keep learning on a day-to-day basis. And I think really all of us do, whether we're aware of it or not. I guess for the last 5 years, I've just thought that my role, my calling is to share the information that I've been given. And I love doing that, and I do it in several different ways. There are times when spirit gets quiet. It's tricky for me sometimes because I'm thinking, okay, where's the message? What is it that you want me to put out into the world? And when there's no message there, I've gone through phases of questioning, gosh, well, did I just make all of that up in my mind in the first place? Mm-hmm. Or angry, like, what are you doing? You're cutting me off? What is that? And I have learned when spirit is quiet, that that's my time to stop putting out into the world, but to turn inward and be fed and process information. And I find that when I can finally relax and do that, that maybe in a week or so, then they start giving me more information to put out there. And so for me personally right now, I'm on a bit of a hiatus where I still go into meditation every morning. I still sit at the foot of God and wait to hear. And I do hear a little bit, but it's not the hour and a half of download. It kind of goes quiet, and then I'll ask, do you have anything else for me today? And I hear no, and it's like, okay, but go finish what's on your plate. Go finish what's on your desk. And when that's all done, then we'll move forward. So that's been tricky for me.
Yeah.
But I'm getting much better with it.
Yeah, it is a weird feeling when you're used to in meditation just keep getting these downloads and volumes of information, just volume, a plethora. Like I couldn't remember everything I was taught. I have everything in journals because I can't remember everything. And then to go through a dry phase of what is going on. I completely understand. Actually, that's where I am right now too. And so I think it's good that people know that this happens. And Jesus explained it to me is that there's seasons for learning and there's seasons for integrating. And so we would be in an integration process of really taking in what we've learned and applying it, actually using it every single day in our life so that we are really connecting with the information given. So I can go through periods of months like that. And then my ego, I call it the spiritual ego, starts going, I'm not connected and something's wrong and I'm cut off the same way that you're saying. And these are all normal things that happen and it's part of the process. And I've also learned that it is also helping me grow my trust and faith and belief in what I have already been told and know that regardless of what I'm feeling, nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. But it is it's going and actually doing the work inside yourself, internalizing it all. And it takes time. Like I have not internalized everything I have learned. I'm working on it. The growing never stops. It will continue forever, and you are constantly learning about yourself, about life, about spirit. So that's not, you don't get to an end point. You don't say, okay, I got it all. I know everything I need to know, and I'm all good, and that's it. And I guess that's another point too, that is understanding our own perfection and our worth, right now, and wherever you are, and not ever doubting that, which of course we do, but you can't do anything or be anything else that's going to give you any more worth or love than you already are right now. That each one of us is so divinely perfect. And I believe that's the crux of this whole journey, is accepting your own wholeness and perfection as you are, because that's the way we all were created. And it is the ego that keeps telling you, you're not good enough, you're not here yet, you got, I see all this business stuff all the time. Oh, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you should be here, and there's no truth to that. You are totally being guided. Your life is already planned out, which is hard for a lot of people. Your life has already been planned out, and as long as you keep staying aligned, and I do that through meditation and prayer, staying aligned keeps leading you to the next place that you need to go on divine time, not earth time.
Right, that old divine timing piece. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I absolutely love talking to you. And I know that, our viewers are going to want to reach out and learn more about you. So how can they access your books, and how can they contact you?
You can find my books on Amazon under A Divinely Ordered Life. And all 3 books will show up on there. It's Are You Ready to Listen? God, and God's Covenant, and the Scripture of Heaven. There's a series for beginners called Creating a Life Worth Living, which is also on Amazon. And you can find me on debbiengoldberg.com. My email address is deb.goldberg@verizon.net. And so I welcome you to reach out. I would love to hear from anyone that would like to chat.
Oh, Debbie, thank you so much for being with us here. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. It's really been lovely getting to know you, and I feel like a soul sister. We are in the same place in what we're doing, and I'm just really grateful that you did reach out to me, and that I get to know you and all the wonderful things that you're doing out in the world.
Thank you, Deb.
Bye-bye.